Okay, let's start with a big, kind of wild question. What if I told you that for any thought to even exist, for any system of meaning to hold itself together without just collapsing into static or noise, it has to follow a precise set of mathematical laws? And I'm not talking about metaphors here. I mean actual, formal rules of geometry and algebra.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to go on a journey into some incredibly deep and foundational work that proposes exactly that. We're not just going to talk about ideas, we are going to build, from the ground up, the very architecture that makes meaning possible in the first place.
All right, let's dive in. Here's our roadmap for this whole construction project. We're going to start by laying the foundation, literally, the space where sense can even exist. Then, we'll discover this crucial, necessary flaw that actually gives it life. From there, we'll uncover the four basic operations of survival, see how a self has to emerge as a consequence, and then, finally, we'll derive a whole new kind of ethics based purely on this geometry. It's a really powerful pyramidal structure of ideas, each one building on the last.
So first things first, before you can have any kind of meaning, you need a place for it to live. But we're not talking about a physical space, right? This is a conceptual one, and we have to build it from scratch.
Now, the first and most radical step is to completely throw out our usual way of seeing the world. Forget about isolated objects, a chair, a rock, an idea. This whole framework is built using a branch of math called category theory, which basically says, stop looking at the things and start looking at the arrows between them, the relationships, the transformations. The argument is that meaning isn't in the noun, it's woven into the web of connections that surround it.
So this new space has a formal name, the site of viability, and it's built from two key components. First, you have a whole collection of different viewpoints or perspectives, which the theory calls contexts. And second, you have a central reference point, the target, which acts as the anchor for what this system agrees is real. So you can just imagine this web of different perspectives, all oriented around some kind of shared central truth.
And that leads us to the very first law of this space. For this system to be viable, to not just be a complete hallucination, all these different perspectives have to remain coherent with each other. It's like if you look at a statue from the front, and then you walk around and look at it from the side, it has to remain the same statue. This rule is like a law of conservation, but for meaning itself.
Now here's a fascinating consequence of building a space this way. Its internal logic isn't the simple binary true or false that we're all used to. Nope. In this world, a statement can be true, it can be false, or it can be simply undetermined. There's a built-in structural space for nuance, for maybe, for evolution. And that's not a weakness. It's the key feature that actually allows the system to learn and to change over time.
So we have our space, and we have its basic rules of coherence. But right now it's just static, it's flat. To bring it to life, to make it dynamic, we need to introduce a disturbance. And this, right here, is where the theory becomes truly profound.
And there it is, the central, striking claim of this whole theory. A viable system of meaning isn't perfect and complete. Its persistence, its very existence, is driven by a fundamental structural imperfection. It's literally built around a void. This idea is formalized as an axiom called the generative singularity, or G0. Now, try to think of it less as a simple gap in knowledge and more like a permanent structural feature of the space itself, like a vortex or a knot in the very fabric of meaning that can never, ever be untied. It's this irreducible flaw that prevents the system from ever finding a final, perfect answer and just collapsing into a static, dead dogma. You see, the struggle is the point. And this is the huge payoff. This axiom completely redefines what we even mean by the real. The real isn't some solid object out there. The real is the name we give to this persistent structural resistance to completion. The system stays alive because it is forever trying and forever failing to close this gap. That ongoing struggle is its existence. Okay, so if a system is defined by this constant tension around a central flaw, how does it cope with that? How does it move? Well, the theory proposes that to survive, any viable system has to develop four fundamental operations, or gestures, to manage this dynamic. Think of this as the basic toolkit for thinking, and it works like a cycle. First, you've got emergence. That's the spark of a new idea, the what if. Then comes maintenance, which is basically memory, holding on to what works and filtering out all the noise. Next, the system tries to propagate that idea, to apply it universally through logic and deduction, but
inevitably, it hits the residue, the error, the exception, the one piece that just doesn't fit. And this encounter with the real forces a brand new cycle to begin. See? Thought isn't a state, it's this endless dynamic loop.
But this whole process isn't free. A living system has to constantly balance two opposing costs. You have the cost of incoherence, which is all the tension from the errors and things that don't fit. And you have the cost of change, which is the energy it takes to try new things. So survival, then, isn't about finding some absolute truth. It's about efficiently navigating this trade-off. It's about finding the path of least dissonance.
Okay, so we have a space, we have a flaw that drives it, and we have the dynamic gestures it uses to survive. But wait, who is the one doing all this thinking? Well, the next layer of our architecture explains how a subject, an I, must emerge as a necessary consequence of this entire setup. And the definition of the self this theory gives us, it's pretty radical. The subject is not some ghost in the machine. It isn't a thing at all. It is a function. The theory calls it the locus of torsion. It's the specific, stable pattern of tension that organizes itself around that central whole to manage the system's core lack. The self in this model is the knot that holds the fabric of your meaning together right at its weakest point.
And this is the really striking conclusion of this section. Your identity, your I, is not defined by what you have, your beliefs, your memories, but by the unique shape of your structural lack. Your self is the scar tissue that forms around your own personal wound, and it's the very thing that gives your universe of meaning its unique shape and its resilience. We've now arrived at the final, and I think maybe the most beautiful part of this whole structure. If the self is just a geometric shape of tension, what happens when two of these selves meet? This framework uses that very question to build a powerful and entirely new understanding of ethics. So the last piece of the puzzle is this concept of chirality. Just like your hands are mirror images of each other, each subject's central torsion, their fundamental lack, has a unique geometric orientation. It has a specific shape and a handedness. And this brings us to this incredible ethical conclusion. Connection, trust, maybe even love. It's not about finding someone who shares all your beliefs, or someone who completes you by filling your emptiness. It's about finding a subject whose fundamental lack is complementary to yours. It's an interlocking of imperfections, where the specific shape of one person's void provides the exact structure needed to stabilize the others. It's a subtraction of constraints, not an addition of substances. So, we've journeyed all the way from the basic requirements for meaning to a mathematical definition of love, and the theory leaves us with this profound and really personal question. It asks us to stop thinking about who we are in terms of what we contain, and to start asking, what is the unique and beautiful shape of my own necessary imperfection? What is the geometry of myself?